Welcome back to the Let's Glow Show. It's Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother, and every single week we talk to a creative entrepreneur changing the way that their industry works and finding their own glow up in the world. So today we have a very special guest, Miss Tara Wilson, the founder of Fierce Lab Live and the Tara Wilson Agency. Welcome, Tara.
Good morning, Amanda. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you.
I'm so excited. Okay, so you're not in Michigan. Tell everybody where you are.
So I sit in Fort Worth, Texas. So I'm in the central time zone. And yeah, we're here in Dallas, Fort Worth, kind of in the center of the country where so many opportunities happen, especially for women. And since I focus on women and with Fierce Lab and the agency, it's a great place to be.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I'm very excited to say that in about 2 days, I'm going to be checking into a flight, heading over to Fort Worth, Dallas, and specifically Denton, Texas, to actually meet you in person.
Yes.
Lab Live. So tell our wonderful listeners what Fierce Lab Live is.
Yeah, so we'll take it a step back.
Yeah.
So Fierce Lab is my agency's women's empowerment platform. We established it in 2019, and we started as a live event, evolved it into a podcast, corporate programming. We developed an iOS app, and in 2024, we decided to launch a college tour. And you are joining me at UNT in Denton for our college tour. So we are bringing the empowerment platform to young women at the collegiate level. We focus on career development, financial intelligence, mental health, self-care, and risk-taking. And I'm just really excited to have you joining us and being a part of that conversation, bringing your voice, because you are an alumni of UNT, right?
I'm not an alumni of UNT, but I did live in Denton, Texas, and worked with a lot of previous UNT alumni. So this is how it's full circle for us, Tara. So 5 years ago now, I started my own nonprofit organization called the Rebrand in Denton, Texas.
Okay.
And some of the UNT alumni attended that program, and they were like, "We want to help. What can we do? How can we help this grow?" So I actually graduated from a school here in Southfield, Michigan called Lawrence Tech. But my husband got a project in the Denton area and was like, "You want to come to Denton, Texas?" I was like, "Where is that? What is that?" And he was like, "Just come." And we got there, and I struggled to make friends. And I started volunteering, and I started meeting more people. And the clothing swap eventually came out of those people that I met. And we hosted it, and it grew to this big sustainable platform. And then the pandemic hit, and we moved back to Michigan. But since being back, I started getting grants for the program. I'm starting to work with larger institutions to grow the program and to build an internship program that we're modeling off of the work that I did with students at UNT. So
I love this.
I'm really an alumni, but I've worked with amazing people from UNT, and everybody I've met that went to UNT is just like top-notch, beautiful people.
Yes. We have found the same in bringing our program to campus and meeting young women who are very interested in building and thriving both professionally and personally. And so I love that we're going to be able to collaborate and have conversation together and really talk about your work as well. So I'm, again, thrilled that you're bringing your voice to our community. Thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I'm excited to go back to Denton because it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, so much has changed. The thing that I saw that I think is very interesting that you touched on is that most of the students that were reaching out to me were in the fashion merchandising program.
They have such a strong program there, don't they?
But not a lot of internship opportunities. Mm-hmm. So they were coming to me and saying, "What can we create with you? What can we make with you? How can I help? What can I do?" And we were creating platforms for these women that were raising their hand and saying, "I want to do something more. I want to do something extra. I want to go above and beyond so that I can carve my own path for my career, because what opportunities are available are not what I want, but I want to create my own," which I thought was so exciting, empowering to me that they, one, trusted me, but also now I have an opportunity to create a platform. So Tara, I want to ask you, how did Fierce Lab Live come about? Was it?
Well, yeah, when you mentioned that when you moved to Denton, you were struggling to make friends, that really rung a bell with me. So I tell people when I moved to Texas out of college, I graduated from Auburn University in Alabama. I knew one person in the city of Fort Worth, and that was it. And you're used to being in a collegiate bubble, and you don't know that you're in a bubble. And then when you start your career, it's either going to go really well or you're going to be mediocre. And I fell to this category of being mediocre. And I felt like I made every mistake in the book financially. I also struggled with mental health issues at the time in my early 20s. And, I didn't know how to kind of evolve my career. I mean, all the things. And I really kind of had to grind it out in order to get to where I needed to be by the time I was in my 30s. And it was very challenging. And instead of coming through that period and feeling empowered and positive about myself and what I experienced, and prideful, like I got through this and I learned all these things, I instead felt a tremendous amount of shame because I didn't get it right the first time. Being type A, perfectionist, those are things that I deal with. I moved the finish line as an example. I expect to do it the right way the first time. Yeah. And all of that didn't happen. And so I went through my 30s building my career. And by the time I hit my 40s, I started to reflect. And a dear friend was having a conversation with me one night. And she was like, Tara, if you could give yourself permission to do anything, what would that be? I thought for a minute and I said, I have something to say. I give myself permission to use my voice. And I started to talk about all of my learnings and how I really wanted to give back to young women so that, not to say young women aren't going to make mistakes. We're all going to have mistakes. Yeah. But I wanted to at least share my own experiences so that they could maybe avoid the mistakes I made. And more than that, so much more than that, I wanted to tell the stories of other women like me who had something to say. And that's how the platform began. It was like, let's pull women together. Let's share our experiences so that other women can thrive from what we've experienced, and they can build a roadmap based on pulling pieces from each of us. So that's how it came about. And that was in 2019.
I love that. We need that. We need, not only do we need the platform, but we need to see people in our avenues saying, it's okay. Like, however it turns out is the way it's supposed to turn out. There's no right or wrong way. That's right. And so courageous of you to take that leap, especially. So I'm curious, you said you started to reflect in your 40s. What has that experience been for you? What has it been like for you since? So you finally started to reflect. Now you're building this beautiful platform. Now you're expanding to education and higher education. How has that experience impacted the way you look at your career now that you've grown through?
Yeah, I mean, 20 years later, I can reflect back and say, all right, it was no one's responsibilities to manage me, to coach me up, to mentor me in my 20s, and we talk a lot about this at Fierce Lab. There's this fallacy that there's this formal internship program or this formal mentorship program or sponsorship, and it's just going to be handed to you. And that's not how it works. But you don't know that because so many people talk about, oh, my mentor and all this. So I've learned that I had it pretty good in my 20s. I just didn't know it. I've learned that I was not alone. And again, yet a reason for building Fierce Lab, which was that we were all struggling. We were all finding our way. We were all faking it until we made it. And but I didn't know that. I felt very isolated and alone. And yet again, that's why Fierce Lab exists, so that women don't feel that isolation and that they are the only one experiencing these things. And then, on the flip side, and it wouldn't matter when I reflected on it, but now I'm realizing the impact that Fierce Lab is having on other women. A woman that comes to our live event which is our annual event that we host in Fort Worth, different from the college tour. And we just hosted it last week. You get this feedback about the incredible power of the women in the room. That's something we really work diligently to do, is to cultivate wonderful voices and bring women from all over the country. And this year, like, several women commented on that. They're like, people are from all over. They're not just women from here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I said, that's one of the things that we love doing, is bringing women from across the country, just like we're going to get to meet you in 2 days, That's so important, because I don't know about you, but I do kind of live in a bubble, whether I want to or not. Your life can just become this little circle and microcosm of what you surround yourself with. And so I think it's important to bring other voices into the conversation, and it makes the networking so much more powerful too. It expands the network.
Yeah, 100%. That's, where the diversity and inclusion comes in through like active practice, and just so you know, Tara, this is a big deal for me, because this will be, I've spoken in other places in the country, I've spoken overseas, but I've never, and I'm just going to say this out loud, like, this is the first of many where they reached out to me specifically, where you've offered compensation for the travel. A lot of the times, and this is what I'm going to talk about on Friday, like, I am working so that I can pay for the risk taking myself. What comes to me, so I'm not sure if you know, but I was crowned the first ever Miss Voluptuous America, which is based in the UK. And so I say all the time I'm a global speaker, because I got to speak in London and Italy, but I had to push my way through the door. I was like, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to pay my way. I'm going to get there, and I'm going to blow your socks off. Right. Mm-hmm. And a lot of situations happen like that, where I'm like, I'm coming, I'm paying for it. I'll do whatever I can do to get there. So it's really validating for the work that I'm doing, and life-changing for me, because now I can say, like, this group reached out to me, and they're going to compensate my time and travel, and they see the value in the speaker and the wisdom. Working with Olympia, she was just amazing. She's like, someday we'll get you to a place where we can pay your speaker fees and your travel expenses. And at the time of the message, it was like, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this is working. The work that I've been putting in is working.
Yes.
I try to not hide behind that. Like, I pay for opportunities. I will do the work to get there. And now the buds are, like, the plants are growing out of that experience with it. They're showing their fruit, because groups like yours are like, hey, we want to bring you, and we believe in what you're doing, and we want to pay for it.
There's two things there, Amanda, that I want to touch on. So first and foremost, it's always been important to me that we, at a minimum, pay for the travel for our out-of-town speakers. And so that includes ground transportation, airfare, and putting you up in hotel accommodations, because we are inviting you into our space. And so that has always been important to me, because I've spoken at other people's conferences who I had to fly myself there, and then it's sort of like, I was like, why am I even here? There was no way to integrate me into the experience, yet this other person presumably was making money off of what we were doing. So that has always been important to us, to, at a minimum, be able to do that. And then, to your point about taking the risk that you yourself pushed open doors for you, I talk about that as well in the founding story of Fierce Lab. And in my 20s, when I didn't see a lot of women having success, and I didn't have access to women locally, I started to find women at at conferences in other cities. I'm notorious for clipping out articles about women out of, like, say, the Wall Street Journal and this, that, and the other. But I would go to these conferences so I could hear them speak, and I could take things away from them. And to your point, it was on my own dime, but it gave me access. I mean, Sarah Blakely, Martha Stewart. I mean, like, I can give you distinct instances of meeting these women and having a one-on-one moment with them. But I booked a ticket the night before and I slept on a friend's floor in order to be able to meet Martha Stewart, you know? And I don't think there's enough conversation around, and you said it, risk taking, like betting on yourself, investing in yourself for these moments. And what I know in my 40s is life is about moments and experiences. And like, have I ever done business with Martha Stewart? No, but I did end up doing business with her team, you know, and it all developed out of being in that experience.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious how much, because I want to touch on your agency as well. Curious how much of your business as an entrepreneur is based on some of these risks that you've taken.
A lot of my business is based on the risk. So to share with your audience, my agency is an experiential marketing agency. That means that we do live events for, in this particular case, we do them for Fortune 500 companies, and we create live event experiences for the purpose of marketing. That's what experiential is. So if you've ever been to a festival and maybe you've entered somebody's tent, whether it be High Noon or Samsung or a beauty brand's tent, and they've like given you samples and you've had an experience, that's experiential. You're connecting with the brand in a live environment, in real life environment. We happen to work with sportswear and beauty brands. And so as an example, Nike's a client. Yeah. It is probably the number one question I get. How did you land Nike? I mean, you know, and in my mind, it sounds like, well, A, you're a boutique agency. B, you sit in Fort Worth, Texas, and you landed Nike within the first 9 months of owning your agency. How in the world did you do that? It's to your point, Amanda, it's about taking risks. It's about being willing to ask, who do you know, who do you know, who do you know, and continue to push the boundaries of getting to know people, and maybe risking making yourself look a little foolish. In my case, I met someone within Nike's walls, like maybe the third Nike person I was introduced to, and he kept saying, I don't know why you're here in Chicago visiting with me. You live in Dallas. And there's plenty of opportunities in Dallas. I believe in fishing where the fish are. And that he said that like 4 or 5 times in our 30-minute conversation. And at the end of our conversation, he said, you know, I'm going to introduce you to the folks in Dallas. I think you should fish where the fish are. Well, multiple weeks to 2 weeks went by with my follow-up, yet I didn't get in the introduction he said he would do. And so I was like, I'm going to send this man a fishing pole. And so we went and we bought a green fishing pole because our agency colors are green, and some green fishing lures. And I wrote a note and I tied it on and we overnighted it. And the note was like, I look forward to fishing with you in Dallas. I look forward to fishing where the fish are. Now, that got his attention and it got the introduction, you know, but I was willing to look. Well, I didn't even worry about looking foolish. I mean, if that is their expression and they say it 4 times in a meeting, they're known for that expression. And I was like, he'll know exactly what I'm getting at here. And I got the introduction. So yeah.
I love that. Is so, like, I'm just going to say it. It feels like very brave, a little ballsy to send like someone this fishing pole. Is that your usual MO? Have you done anything like that before? Or is that the first time you've done?
I do think creatively about how to link things and make things kind of connect. So the fishing pole wasn't the final stop. It wasn't like I sent the fishing pole, I got the introduction, and we got the business. That led to an introduction to someone in Dallas. She's now a good friend. And you see I have on red lipstick. I wear red lipstick every day. And when I met the Dallas contact in person, her name is Heidi, she commented on my lipstick. Oh, thank you. And I often joke, you know, at the time I was wearing a MAC lipstick and I would say it looks good on everybody, even boys. And we laughed. And then we had our meeting and it was kind of the same thing. I'm going to introduce you to some people. And several weeks went by and the follow-up, you know, just they're busy. Yeah. Didn't hear anything. So what'd I do? I went and bought her a tube of lipstick, put it in a green lacquered box, wrote a note, overnighted it, and immediately she sends a note, you know, a text message. Oh my gosh, I just got the lipstick, blah, blah, blah. I'll be sure and set up the meeting. And so she did.
Yeah.
But it didn't end there, you know? And this is kind of you talk about full circle moments. It was 2015, if I'm not mistaken, and fall of 2015, and Swell bottles, water bottles, were in Starbucks, and they had a Kelly Green Swell bottle inside Starbucks. So I ran all over the Metroplex buying them, and I called the lady that does decals for me, and she did my logo in a small decal, and I put it on the bottom of the Swell bottle, and I attached a handwritten note, a tag that said, Nike and the Tara Wilson agency make a swell team. And when we had this big meeting, everyone, that was their takeaway. That was, you know, the leave behind. Mm-hmm. Now, did that move the needle with Nike? No. Right. But fast forward 2 years later, when I'm on the Inc. 5000 list, and I went to the Inc. conference for the first time, and Sarah Koss, the founder of Swell Bottle, is one of the only women on stage talking about entrepreneurship. And I was like, I have to meet her. So I hustled out to the corridor after her talk, and I saw her way down in the distance, and I ran down, and I'd already keyed up, like, in my phone, the photo of the Swell bottles and I said, I just want to let you know, you helped me land Nike. And then I showed her the picture of the bottles, and that turned into a friendship and a mentorship. And, you know, so I share all that. It's a long-winded way to say, you've got to be memorable. You've got to take some risks, and you have to know. People love knowing these stories. Sarah loved hearing that was a connection that helped, you know, like her invention was something I utilized to imagine and land something that was a dream of mine.
I love it. But in every instance, you were hearing the needs of the people. You were empathizing with their likes, their dislikes. You were gifting from a place of love. It didn't seem like, and it's exciting for me to hear, because I just started working with a young lady named Kelsey. She's got a company called Give Wrapped, and she does strategic gift giving. And for me, it's something I love to give, but it's on the back burner a lot of the times that I'm thinking about it later. And so now working with her, I'm like, not only do I want to support your business, but I want to support other local businesses. You go find these things that just scream like Creative Fairy Godmother, where we can support their businesses, whether they be sustainable, local, whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's just interesting that you say that, because now I'm in a space where I'm like, how can I strategically give more to make people feel special, feel good, and then think of me later when they're booking their next speaker or booking their next XYZ, whatever the case may be.
I think there's a book called Giftology. I'm looking it up here.
Because
the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, increase referrals, and strengthen client retention. It's called Giftology. And I will admit, I'm an avid reader, but I have not read this, but I have heard that it's a really incredible book. So
love this. Well, and I love that you're shopping with brands that make you feel good, then make your client feel good, or your potential partner feel good, but you're running off of intuition. Like, I hear you see a thing, you make a decision, you go for it. How have you built that relationship with your brain, your heart, and your gut?
You know, that's a really great question. We were just talking about this at Fierce Live last week. I interviewed May Zawada, who is the VP of retail for Samsung, in a fireside chat. And she was talking about how she has learned in her career to trust her gut. And it's the same thing for me. Now, trusting your gut doesn't always serve you well. Let's just be honest about that. I mean, that is a very emotional way of making decisions. And let's use finances as an example. You can't make decisions financially emotionally. You know, numbers never lie. But if you're like, oh, well, my gut tells me that this number is not right, or I'm going to do better, you know, so just know that. But for me, over time, I've recognized that my gut told me something and I went against it and then I regretted it. Or, something happened, I didn't trust my instincts and then I hired the wrong person. Or I didn't trust my instincts and the client treated me poorly like I thought they were potentially going to. So I've gotten better at listening to my gut and recognizing those little flickers, those little clues, and then acting on them. I think that's the key difference. You can hear it, you can feel it, but you aren't attuned to it or you ignore it, and then you wish you hadn't. And recognizing when you do ignore it and the outcomes from doing so. I mean, I can give you a great example. We pitched a large client back in 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. And post pitch, the client had asked us to go to dinner. And so, the team, so we pitch, we feel good about it, and then we go to dinner. And then the next day I tell the team, I'm like, we didn't get the business. And they're like, what? And I was like, my guts tell we didn't get the business. How do you know? And I was like, here's what I think. If we'd been who they were going to select, they would have taken the opportunity that they had 2 hours at a dinner table to start concepting ideas and riffing and all those things. I said, my gut tells me we didn't get the business. It's like, you got to tune into those. And those are hard. Those are hard moments when you're like, I don't want to believe this, but you got to listen to your gut.
Oh man, I feel the same. Like when I don't listen to my gut, I usually feel immense regret. Like there's that, I knew I should have listened to myself. Why did I do that? And I find myself dwelling on it. How do you move past that? Like, okay, my gut told me what to do. I went against it. Now here we are, post not listening to my gut, and I'm in my head about it. How do you move out of that headspace and back into the action space to trust yourself again?
Yeah, that's really hard because, life gives you experiences and you don't want to become jaded. I think the thing that I'm trying to impart to young people when we're at these college stops is the world is your oyster right now. Like, it is a blank slate. And the truth is, it's still my oyster too, and I still have a blank slate ahead of me, but I have 20 plus years of experience behind me. And I become jaded, like, I'm not going to get my hopes up too much because I know how this could turn out. So you're right. It is very hard to turn it off and start fresh and move forward. I give myself a little time to ruminate on it. And then it becomes easier. The first time you lose that big piece of business that you thought you were going to get, and it's just like a gut punch and it's just awful. I mean, it took weeks. I emailed 3 of my mentors and I was like, we pitched, I thought it was great, and we didn't win. How do I get over this?
Yes.
I got 3 pieces of information back from each one that has been very useful as I've moved on down the line. So the next time we pitched a big piece of business and we didn't get it, it hurt a little less. It took a shorter amount of time to get over.
Yeah.
So I do think talking to people and recognizing patterns helps. And then you just can't keep beating yourself up. I heard an expression in my 20s that I still carry with me to this day, which is something to the effect of, you've got to be like a baseball player. If you strike out in the first inning, you can't still be thinking about your strikeouts in the 3rd inning. You gotta, you gotta move on. And it's that same concept in business. You're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some. Let's just hope you're swinging a lot.
Okay. Yes, I had I have events experience, and I'm going into that route and actually learning about the Tara Wilson agency. I've never heard the terms of marketing that you're talking about, experiential marketing. And so seeing your website really excited me because I'm like, I think this might be kind of what I'm doing, because I've always tried to struggle to give myself a title because I'm a creative fairy godmother. I make stuff happen. What the stuff is generally events. But so I have a long history of hosting events. And the first event that I ever hosted working for a corporate organization, this was the first time my manager at the time had let the reins go. She was like, it's all on you. You got this. And the day of the event, not the day before, we were less than 24 hours away from the event. And I can remember this like it was like yesterday. So I'm on the phone with the venue. They're like, so what time are you arriving? And I'm like, we'll be there at 10. They're like, breakfast starts at 5. Or we have a 5 o'clock start time. And I was like, breakfast? We have been marketing lunch this whole time. And my whole stomach like fell into my belly. Like I could feel the blood like rushing through my face. Like I couldn't see straight. We have 300 people coming tomorrow and you guys are making breakfast. And I told everybody lunch. And, and then my boss comes like wandering over. She's sitting down on my cubicle desk and she's looking at me, turning beet red. And I was like, let me just meet with my team real quick. We'll call you right back. She looks at me and she goes, it's figure outable. We'll figure this out. She's like, take a deep breath. We went outside. We went for a walk. We figured out a plan. We turned it into a brunch, which was great. We paid the extra money for the mimosas, which was also great. Made everybody happy. We reworked the agenda. Beautiful. We had the plan. We were going for it. Everybody was on board, the venue, the community, the team. And I'm walking down the hall to the printer and she stops me and like grabs me by my shoulders and she goes, let it go. Go. And I was like, she's like, if you think about how you messed up for the rest of the day, you're going to continue to make mistakes. We can't afford any more. So just let it go and do the plan.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm viscerally feeling your experience because I've been in your shoes where the wheels have come off. And even when the wheels don't come off, like going back to that perfectionist side of things. And I'm just that type of entrepreneur, type A perfectionist. I'll be standing at the end of an event, an activation, and I am picking it apart. And last year I was doing something and a client was there and she saw that, and she's such a lovely lady. And I told her, I said, you have the ability to see people, like she's very in tune to how people are thinking and their emotions, and she can read them really well. And she looked at me and she was like, don't do that. And I was like, what? And she's like, I see what you're doing. You are picking this apart. Do not do that. So one thing went like this, but everything else was amazing. And you don't need to ruminate on the one thing that you think was, she was like, I see what you're doing. Don't do that, And what a beautiful thing when you have someone in your life that can figuratively or literally grab you by the shoulders and say, stop worrying about that. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. And the more people like that you have in your life, the more you start to do it to yourself. Because I do that a lot. I'll have a very successful event. I do the clothing swap festivals. They're generally, and they're always successful. And every single time I'm picking and poking. And I caught myself doing it recently. I was speaking at a conference that was larger than I've ever spoken at before. The overall experience was great, but there was like 2 small pieces that I was like, just like I was on a treadmill and I was going 100 miles an hour and I was just picking. And I was like, wait, what is like one good thing? And I just like could hear my husband's voice. He's like, what can you focus on that's not that?
Yeah.
I remember there was a woman that was there and she was just like emotionally moved by what I was talking about. And she was crying to me and opening up to me and we hugged and we embraced and we had this beautiful moment, and I just completely ignored that moment that I had. I was doing what I was supposed to do. It connected with her. It resonated with her, for her. And I was so focused on this thing over here that I like forgetting that this beautiful experience happened. And so I do that also.
But why do we do that, Amanda? I mean, not everybody's like that. Not everybody picks it apart.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? I don't know.
I know some of it. I believe that some of it's like, mommy issues. I have some, that I'm working through actively. And a lot of my coaches or therapists will say like, that's a 5-year-old Amanda thing. That's a mommy thing. That's because I have this perfectionist in me, and there's also this like artist, a little like whimsical, crazy. I have a very like type A and type like Z in me to kind of go both directions where, I'm like over hyper picking, but then also like whatever happens will happen. It's like but yeah, I'm curious, like where does it come from for you? Because for me, I see some spaces where, it's like it's not good enough, being told, not even by my parents, but like other advisors, bosses, that I would never be good enough to be a CEO. I would never be good enough to be an entrepreneur. I'd never speak on a stage bigger than this, or, and I've told these things to my face. And so I try to remove myself and know that like that person was speaking out of fear for me, concern for me, their limitations in their life. And I don't have to hang on to those, but I've brought them with me. It's hard to like not let that go.
Do you keep like a folder of testimonials, atta-girls, like,
I need to.
Praise? I find that that's helpful to me. I'm just like, within the last week, we, like I mentioned, did Fierce Lab Live, and there have been a lot of posts on LinkedIn, and I'm literally screenshotting them and dropping them into a folder. We use them for marketing purposes down the line, but there are times where I need a pick-me-up. And recently, back in May, a client told me, he said he moved into a new role and he wouldn't be able to work with us any longer. He won't be hiring agencies. But he said, I want you to know you are one of my all-time favorite agencies. And I almost let that pass. I dismissed it in my mind initially when hearing it. I'm like, oh, he's just saying that. And then it took me a few weeks to process. And I'm like, no, he's not just saying that. He meant that. When have you known him to just say something? He's not that kind of person that just blows smoke. And so I went back to him and I was like, thank you so much for that compliment. I'm going to ask for 30 minutes of your time. I'd like to know, since you've moved out of this role, if there's some other people you would recommend that I start to connect with. But I had to like get through my doubts about I don't know what it is about receiving a compliment that I want to dismiss it immediately, instead of trusting that they mean it. Does that say something about me? Does that mean that I give false compliments and therefore I think other people are giving false compliments? I don't know, but it was a valuable conversation to have when I did go back to him, and he's like, sure, be happy to put 30 minutes in. And I kept it at 30, and he gave me 4 people he would recommend I connect with. And, I've been able to run with that. And he meant it. He told me, he said, you guys are one of my all-time favorite agencies. And that's powerful. So then I use that, when I'm reaching out to those 4 new people, and oh, by the way, Mr. XYZ says this about us, and I'd love to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, that's the compliment thing, Tara.
Oh,
I do that too. And so like, it's making me feel seen, working with someone who is as successful as you are, go through some of these similar emotions. And I hope that it also, reminds like the people that are here with us right now watching that like, we're all human. We're all people that feel emotions, and just because we're feeling bad about something doesn't mean we shouldn't go for the thing. The compliment thing is huge. And it's not even just huge for me, but it's so many people that I know. So many successful entrepreneurs are just, they can't hear it. They're not willing to listen. I think part of it is that like, I need to go find, I need to go create, I need to go build. Part of that entrepreneur's brain to like constantly be seeking and searching and building. But I love the idea of keeping a notebook. And I've heard it before, but I've never done it. But maybe I should start now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just keep them like Some I keep in email,
Yeah.
an email folder, and then others I keep in a different folder, like the screenshots.
Mhm.
But you're talking about like going for the really big thing. I sometimes will frame it in my mind like this: why not me? Somebody's going to create this. Somebody's going to land this opportunity. Somebody's going to have to do this work. Why not me? Why not?
Why not?
You know?
Mhm.
And when you start to frame things up like that, you're more willing to like raise your hand for the opportunity or throw your hat in the ring for the chance to do the work, or reach out to the person that you want their business and tell them. I saw somebody on Instagram the other day talking about, she was discussing job interviews, but to tell the interviewer, I really want this job, and I'm like, well, that should apply to anything and everything across the board. I really want this opportunity. I'd really like the opportunity to work with you and your team. And the other thing I would say, since we're talking about creative entrepreneurship, it's like never burn the bridge. It seems, listen, I got a rejection on Friday at 5:45 on Friday. I'm just like, are you kidding me? After, an intense week of Live and launching our college tour. And my natural instinct was just to fire off a fiery email, and I'm like, nope. Don't burn the bridge, find it within yourself, even if you have to grit it out to say, thank you for the opportunity to bid. I wish you well on your project. And then one of my mentors taught me to always go back and ask, why didn't I get the business?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I don't know what his statistic was. We'll say 9 times out of 10, they're not going to tell you.
Sure.
But occasionally you'll get the feedback that you really do need. And then if you can't get it from the prospective client, then seek it out from others who have insight into your business, but maybe aren't necessarily your clients. So vendors, as an example, I went to a vendor once and I was like, hey, you know my business well enough. You work with all these other agencies. What are we missing? And he was like, well, you don't have the digital piece shored up, da, 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 da. And it's like, okay, thanks for that. It's hard. It's hard. And I don't want to sugarcoat that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to launch something brand new like Fierce Lab and to launch a concept that no one else. I did a post on LinkedIn when we announced our college tour. We'd finally gotten our 4 stops for the fall lined up. We have brand partners in order. And so I did a big post, Amanda, on LinkedIn. And it was all about like the rejection we faced up front. And how, in spite of all that, we still had to show up for ourselves because we could see the vision. When no one else can, we could still see it. And that is what's so vital in entrepreneurship, and especially when you're starting something new, is to be willing to bet on yourself when everybody else is telling you it won't work, because they're going to tell you it won't work.
Sure.
And they'll tell you it won't work.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get a little success and you're like, well, maybe it will work, but it probably won't work for long. And you keep doing it, and eventually they're like, I know her. You know, you're doing amazing things. I'd love to get coffee with you. And you're like, oh, I remember when you didn't give me the time of day. And
how do you have such big vision and then execute with, I just want to touch on the type A piece, because that can sometimes feel, for me at least, it gets in the way sometimes. I'll still go after it, but how do you mediate those 2 versions of yourself? The one with you can see it all, you could see it unfolding, you could see it 10, 20 years down the line, you could see all of that stuff, and then want to pick.
Well, I don't tend to nitpick up front. Okay. I nitpick after I've done it. and then part of that is, how do we make it better? How do we get better the next time? So 2 things here to answer that question. I have a big vision. How do I get it going? How do I launch it? And I think the best example of this is, I came up with the idea for the app. We have over 500 pieces of all original content that live in the Fierce Lab app. It's free. It was not always free, but it is now free. And I didn't know any, I mean, I just knew I wanted to build an app to augment all these live events we were doing. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. And I was like, okay, what do I have to do first? I have to do all these things. And, you know, I mean, I literally just made a list of anything and everything that would need to happen to build an app. Mm-hmm. And then I started to categorize it. And then the best thing I did was I broke it down into quarters. And I gave myself an entire year to build this app.
Nice.
And we did it. That was the crazy part. That's the part that's mind blowing, is that it was an idea at the end of a year. And by December of the next year, we'd launched it. And it was because I'd broken, I stepped back and said, what, everything that I possibly needed to do, and then broke it down by quarters. And a lot of it was like finding the right people to make it happen. Mm-hmm. So that's how I get a big vision off the ground. The nitpicking part comes after the fact, mm-hmm. but I do it to improve.
Yeah.
So coming out of last Friday's college tour, there were a lot of learnings, and I sat down on Saturday morning and I was like, okay, here's the category. Here's what we got to do different this week, you know, and will we hit all of those changes? I don't know, but we're sure going to strive for it, because one of my mentors once said, you know, we're always trying to get 10% better. And I also saw someone recently, she's a Stanford grad or a Stanford student. And if you improve by 1% every day, at the end of the year, you're 37% better than you were when you started. And she like showed you the math formula, which I don't have to share. Yeah. But I was like, that's impressive. Just get 1% better every day, and you will have improved by almost 40% by the end of the year.
Have you heard of the book Atomic Habits?
Say that again.
Have you heard of the book Atomic Habits?
I read that at the beginning of this year. Yes.
That's exactly what they talk about. Mm-hmm. Just remove some resistance, add a little bit of this, just try every day. I definitely am a person that's like, how can I get 1% better every day?
Yeah. Well, and what I took from Atomic Habits, I mean, there were a lot of great takeaways. But the big thing that I remember is he was like, I don't miss a habit 2 days in a row. I can miss one day, but I can't miss 2 days. And I'll give you the example of making my bed. Until the beginning of this year, until January, I did not make my bed. I said, life's too short to make your bed every day. And then something switched, and I was just like, let me see if I can do this. Yeah. And so I make my bed every day, but there are days that I miss. And when I miss more than one day in a row, I do think about what he says about not missing more than one day in a row. And then I get back on making the bed every day, you know? And it's something that's so small. That is such a small thing to make your bed. Yeah. But they say how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm. And that'll scare your pants off of you. Yeah. Long enough. Yeah.
I am curious about your, like, how do you manage your personal life and your personal relationships and, you know, like family and friends, while also being the CEO of a business?
Okay. Well, first thing I tell everyone is I don't have kids. So that work-life balance that so many women have to manage and juggle, and some struggle with, and I don't have that in my equation. Mm-hmm. So I know this. Now I tell people I have a business and it's a baby. But how do I manage it with family, and how do I manage it with friends? I try and prioritize family. I call my mother every day. I haven't always done that, but I call it for the last 15 years. I call my mother every day. It's very rare we don't talk. I try and call my in-laws once a week. You know, I mean, those kinds of things. My friendships probably do suffer. I was just talking to someone about this. about how, we're all so busy. We're going in so many different directions, and you can get your feelings hurt because people aren't checking in on you, but you're like, well, am I really checking in on them?
Right.
So I have to sometimes be very deliberate in sending the note, sending the text message. And one of the things that I've learned to do is if a person crosses my mind, shoot them a note. I mean, at a minimum, and then that way.
I love that. How do you maintain your relationship with yourself?
Oh, well, the number one thing I give myself is time in the morning. They say Jeff Bezos has gone on record and said he's a putterer of the mornings. He likes to putter. I have always been a putterer. Even as a child, my mother would get me up and I had a little routine. I would go to the floor vent and sit on the floor vent in the wintertime and heat up with the blanket around me. And then, I had these little routines.
Mm-hmm.
I still like that. I just shifted my alarm clock to a lot earlier to get up, to have the time. And that is when I spend time on my mindset. I have a book I read, do some journaling. I have prompts that I do every morning. And when I don't do those, so like I came off a very busy week, I didn't touch it at all last week, I feel off, so that is what I do for me. The other thing I used to be a runner.
Okay.
I need to even say it like I used to be. How about this? I took time off from running this summer.
There you go.
And instead chose to walk. And so I got out almost every night and walked, the goal being to hit 10,000 steps every day. And that has been so freeing for my mind, just to step out of the house. Sometimes I listen to jazz music. Sometimes I listen to motivational books. Sometimes I just walk in silence and let my mind go. But those are the two things I do for myself. Walk in the evenings, and then in the mornings, do what I call my mindset work, which is working in a journal, answering prompts. That takes about an hour, and having a cup of coffee before I talk to anybody. How about you? What is your process? How do you invest in yourself?
It's funny that you asked me, because I used to do what you were talking about.
Okay.
Now I've added evening walks.
Uh-huh.
And I would wake up early, do a yoga, do some journaling, do a little just puttering. I love that. I just like putter around. But lately I've been sleeping in, and I'm like, why am I not doing the thing that feels good?
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is, I still work a full-time job. I'm here at my full-time job that I got to jump right into after this. But it's not like, I feel when I say this, I'm just going to say what I've been saying and tell you how I feel about it. What I've been saying is, oh my gosh, we're so busy, which I don't like saying that. Oh my gosh, we've been doing all of this stuff. We've been working all these extra hours. We've been going to bed later because we're doing all this extra work. But I don't like that I'm saying that, and I don't like that I'm doing it, and that's the reason why. I am actively working on shifting the mindset to saying, like, this is the new present where we're working full time and building our businesses at the same time. And it's going to take a little bit extra effort to make sure that I get that extra time in, because I need it now more than ever. That's the reality. So the last couple months, I've been taking a break. We'll put that way. The last couple months I took a break, and it is something that I really want to do now, just because it's getting darker. That's a whole nother thing too. It's getting darker earlier in Michigan. It's like, now we're hitting the 50s. We're hitting lower 50s. We'll start to get into the 40s and the 30s and the 20s, and so everybody starts to get in this hibernation mode really soon. And I just am not in a space where I can start hibernating yet.
Yeah.
I need to prepare my mind and my body for that, to continue the work. So you heard it first today, Tara. This week, we're going to get back on the horse.
Good.
We're going to get back on the horse and try it, because it's so, the journaling, the waking up early, just the time alone is so special. And I've missed it. And I've been feeling off and weird and crunchy and grindy lately. And I don't like that. And I know know that that's part of it.
But you know what? Here's the other thing. We have seasons.
Yeah.
They can be short, they can be long. Yeah. I ran 2 marathons in my 20s and then took 10 years off. Didn't run a marathon. And then started back up and then ran a ton of marathons back to back to back to back. Did an Ironman, did 3 Ironmans, did another marathon. And I'm in a season where I'm taking a pause from that. And that's okay, you know, and that's what I've learned. You asked me up front about what my learnings are in my 40s that I wish I'd known in my 20s. I wish I'd known that there are seasons and it's okay to move through those. You are not going to consistently be the same person over and over and over and over. And that is okay. And I always say, who you are in your 20s is not who you are in your 30s. It's not who you're going to be in your 40s. And that's okay. We talked last Friday at the college stop. You have permission to change, to say this job isn't serving me, this relationship isn't serving me, this friendship isn't serving me, whatever, you know, and you have permission to change. And I think I didn't know that in my 20s, and I stuck things out because I thought I was supposed to. So it's okay that you've been sleeping in, you know, you're giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
It's not you're being lazy. It's just you're prioritizing something else. You're saying yes to something else, so you're saying no to something different. And that's okay. And you can shift at any time. It sounds like you're ready to make another shift. Good for you if it's what you want to do, right?
Yes. Yes. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, we are like almost at time. That was the most beautiful hour. I am so grateful that we got to talk this morning. Before we go, I have 2 more quick questions.
Okay.
The first question is really easy. Where can everybody find you? Where are all the socials? Where is like your go-to places?
So my go-to places for me personally are LinkedIn. So I'm Tara Wilson on LinkedIn. I'm in a green suit in the photo, so you can't miss me. And then Fierce Lab, you can also find on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn at Fierce Lab. So that's where you find us there. Those are my best go-to socials. If you want to look at the websites, my agency website is my name, tarawilson.com. And if you want to look at the Fierce Lab website, which has a lot of amazing information, it's fierce-lab.com. And from there, you can find out how to download the app.
Thanks. We'll link it all below. So all those links that she just mentioned right down there, poke around, please do. And so my final question for you, Tara, is what's one last just overarching piece of advice that you want to give us today?
Yeah. I think it's to recognize that you have strengths, no matter what they are, and to trust your intuition, to trust yourself, to lean into those strengths. You know you better than anyone else. And if you can learn to trust yourself, then that to me is what makes you fierce.
Tara, I'm so grateful for you. I can't wait to meet you.
And I know I'm excited to meet you as well. It's going to be great to see you in person. Thank you for hosting me today. And I mean, what a great warm up to later this week.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much. I'm excited. I'm inspired. I feel seen. I'll just say that. Like, you know, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs, but your mindset has similarities to mine. So I feel seen. I feel grateful that we met. I'm so glad that our paths crossed. I can't wait for the magic that's coming on Friday.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you. Just overarching thank you. Thank you. Thank the girls. Like, Olympia has been amazing to work with this whole time. And I'm so grateful to just be in your sphere. And then also you're bringing me back home to Denton. So I'm excited to go back. I'm going to see all my old friends that I haven't seen in so long. And I'm just really grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, same here. I'm again, very excited to bring your voice to our community and looking forward to it. And by the way, that's a Fierce jacket. Loving your jacket.
I gotta find the right green for Friday. I'm working
There
on
you go. Yep, Kelly Green.
it as we speak. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tara. Thank you all for being here today. As always, we are so grateful for you. If you have any thoughts that came up during the show, any questions for Tara, pop them in the comments. We'll make sure that they get over to her. And just so y'all know, if you're in Detroit, Michigan, we're doing a Halloween party and a party with purpose on the 26th of October at Ideation Orange. Part of the proceeds will be going to a nonprofit for their toiletry drive, the Live Outreach. So make sure you come to that, and we will see you all next week with another creative entrepreneur. It's Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother, and we'll see you next week. Bye.